Easter has nothing to do with Eostre, Ostara, Ishtar, or any other pagan goddess. I have seen people allege that Easter is pagan for years all over the gutters of the internet. I've even heard it from other Christians who probably thought they were being cool and edgy and not like other Christians. Easter was originally a festival to the pre-Christian goddess Eostre. It wasn't, but here's where the myth comes from. There was this one 8th century Anglo-Saxon monk, Bede, who wrote this one sentence, one time, in one manuscript, that Easter was called Easter in Old English because there was this goddess Eostre who was associated with the springtime. So, according to Bede, the etymology of the Old English word for Easter was linked to her. And that is the sum total of everything we know about Eostre. One sentence from one monk. If anyone tells you that eggs or rabbits were associated with the goddess Eostre, they are lying because the name is literally all that we know. I have looked. I wanted to write a goddess based on Eostre in one of my fantasy books, and I learned to my deep disappointment that the name is all that there is. And while I'm sure someone has already typed this argument in the comments, no, Easter has nothing to do with the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar either. Nor are eggs or rabbits associated with Ishtar. As for the goddess Ostara, she was invented in 1835 by Jacob Grimm, one of the brothers Grimm, who decided that there must have been a German version of Eostre over 1,000 years after Bede wrote his one line in one manuscript about Eostre. Jacob Grimm read that one line and decided that because reasons there must have been a German version of this goddess that he called Ostara, who must have had a pre-Christian cult and who must have been associated with rabbits and eggs. Again, the oldest, earliest, first mention of Ostara is from a guy in 1835 who was guessing about religion in ancient Germany. Some other German guy named Adolf Holtzmann later claimed in 1874 that in his personal opinion, Easter rabbits and Easter eggs must have been associated with the goddess Eostre. And way too many people have taken that as more than a guess, which it was a guess. I don't know why German folklorists in the 1800s were creating so much misinformation about pre-Christian religions, but they were. The thing is, we can't even prove that Eostre existed. Bede, or the Venerable Bede, was kind of like the Herodotus of Britain, and he wrote mainly about the 7th and 8th century Christian conversion period. Bede is immeasurably valuable as a written resource for that time period, but he was just one guy who entered the monastery at age 8, which wasn't unusual for the time. But that does mean that he probably wasn't an expert on paganism. So while he probably didn't deliberately lie about stuff, it is possible that there is stuff he just misunderstood or just didn't know, like the actual names of goddesses. But at least Bede actually lived during a time when these pre-Christian deities were being venerated, unlike our German friends Adolf and Jacob, who were again guessing based on that one sentence that Bede wrote. If this goddess Eostre existed, she appears in no other written record. There have been efforts to ascribe myths and legends to her, but those are all revisionist fan fictions from the last 200 years. And again, you cannot claim that rabbits or eggs are associated with her because the name is all that we have. Eggs and rabbits are both Christian symbols. During Lent, medieval people weren't supposed to eat eggs. Nowadays, Catholics only need to abstain from meat on Fridays during Lent, but during the medieval period, they were way more hardcore, and there would be no meats, no fats, no eggs for the full 40 days. This is where Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras comes from. You eat all the fat prior to the start of Lent. So during Lent, people would save all the eggs, they would decorate them, and then at Easter they could eat them. As for rabbits, medieval people associated them with the Virgin Mary because medieval people thought that rabbits experienced virgin birth. Rabbits and hares can get pregnant whilst already pregnant. So medieval people assumed that that meant that they could get pregnant without sex. For funsies, this is the Madonna of the Rabbit from 1530, which predates the first mention of the Easter Bunny. The Easter Bunny, or Easter hare, ironically, appears to have originated in Germany. If Easter bunnies were a pagan tradition that survived conversion, we would expect to see mentions of Easter rabbits or Easter hares or something along those lines during the medieval period. But we don't. Rabbits did have Christian associations in the medieval era, but Easter rabbits specifically don't show up in the medieval era at all. Not until we get well into the early modern era in 1682 do we have the first recorded instance of an Easter hare, and with it something like an Easter egg hunt paired with the Christian holiday. The Easter hare is described as being a local tradition in modern-day southwest Germany by this guy with a very German name that I'm not going to try pronouncing. Now, the Easter hare seems to have been a regional tradition that took time to spread, but again, never mentioned anywhere until the 1680s, roughly 1,000 years after the conversion to Christianity. If these actually were pagan traditions that had survived from the pre-Christian era, there would be some hint of them closer to the pre-Christian era. But there aren't. So we have all these people convinced Easter is a secret pagan holiday because of two folklorists who everyone took way too seriously. Easter is a Christian holiday that originated in 1st century Palestine. It had already been celebrated by Christians for over 600 years before the one and only mention of Eostre appears in the historical record. And as a reminder, Ostara was Eostre fanfiction from 1835. And again, there is no basis for believing that the Mesopotamian Ishtar had any association with rabbits or eggs either. I have a friend, Eli, who has done way more research into Ishtar specifically, and I will share her video if she decides to do a deep dive on this topic. Easter is Christian and always has been.